The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual, or maybe it was just his racing heart. Daniel sat in the sleek lawyer's office, tapping his fingers against the cold mahogany table. The divorce papers lay neatly stacked in front of him, a pen poised at the corner, ready to deliver the final blow to a marriage that once sparkled with promises, but now reeked of betrayal. Across from him, sitting too close for comfort, was Tasha, his mistress. Her long manicured nails drummed impatiently against her thigh. She wore a tight red dress, the kind that screamed trouble. Daniel had promised her that today, once. He signed the papers. They'd be free to flaunt their love without the shadows of guilt or judgment. Tasha didn't like waiting. She liked guarantees. Daniel had been that guarantee, or so she thought. "You're sure she's not coming?" Tasha whispered, leaning in, her perfume flooding his senses. Daniel swallowed hard. "She won't show. She already agreed over the phone. She just wants it over." But even as he spoke the words, a gnawing doubt chewed at his confidence. Lily wasn't the kind of woman to back down from anything without a fight. That had been one of the things he loved about her, her fire, her stubbornness. Until, of course, he started seeing that fire as a threat instead of a blessing. Outside, the low purr of an engine grew louder. Daniel's head snapped toward the window. Tasha turned, following his gaze. A brand-new silver Porsche rolled into the parking lot, its sunroof down, music thumping from the speakers, and behind the wheel, sunglasses glinting under the noon. Sun was Lily. Daniel's blood froze. "What the hell?" Tasha hissed, standing up so fast her chair nearly toppled over. The lawyer, Mr. Hawthorne, looked up from his papers, raising a curious eyebrow. Daniel couldn't breathe. He had never seen Lily look like this before, not desperate, not heartbroken, not even angry. She looked radiant, powerful, almost like she had already won something he didn't know he had lost yet. The Porsche screeched to a perfect stop. Lily stepped out like she was stepping onto a red carpet. She wore a crisp white dress, expensive jewelry, and a pair of heels that clicked authoritatively on the pavement. Heads turned from the nearby sidewalk. Even Mr. Hawthorne, an old man who had seen everything, let out a low whistle. Daniel's panic clawed up his throat. Tasha grabbed her purse. "You told me she wouldn't come. You said this was clean." She jabbed a finger in his chest. I don't know. I swear she said she wasn't." The door swung open before he could finish. Lily strolled in, cool and unbothered, her eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. She didn't even glance at Tasha. Her focus was sharp, slicing straight through Daniel like a blade. "Well, don't everyone stand up at once," she said smoothly, voice dripping with sarcasm. Daniel stumbled to his feet. "Lily, She waved a hand dismissively, cutting him off. She walked to the lawyer's desk and placed a small black folder on top of the divorce papers. "What's this?" Hawthorne asked, peering at the folder. "Amendments," Lily said, removing her sunglasses. Her eyes, calm, cold, locked onto Daniel. "New terms for the divorce. Things have changed." Daniel's stomach twisted painfully. Tasha took a step back, sensing the shift, smelling the disaster in the air. "And who is she?" Lily asked, tilting her head slightly toward Tasha, her tone mocking but lethal. Before Daniel could answer, Tasha blurted, "I don't have time for this." She turned on her heel and stormed out of the office without a second glance. The door slammed behind her, the sound echoing off the walls. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Daniel felt like he was standing in the middle of a battlefield, and he was already losing. Lily picked up the pen and twirled it between her fingers casually, like she had all the time in the world, like she had won. "You always were good at making messes, Daniel," she said softly. "Now you get to watch me clean up." Daniel's knees nearly buckled. He didn't even know what was inside that black folder, but he could feel it. Whatever it wasn't in his favor. Not even close. And for the first time since the affair began, he realized something with horrifying clarity. He hadn't just lost his wife. He had lost the war. Daniel stood frozen, his hands sweaty, heart jackhammering in his chest. He watched Lily take a seat across from him, legs crossed elegantly. exuding that impossible calm she always had when she knew she held all the cards. Mr. Hawthorne cleared his throat and slid the black folder toward himself, adjusting his glasses as he flipped it. Open! Daniel caught a glimpse of the bold letters at the top of the first page. Property reallocation agreement. What is this? He croaked, voice hoarse. Lily smiled sweetly, but it didn't reach her eyes. Just a little update. Since you chose to disrespect our marriage publicly, Daniel, I thought it was only fair that the division of assets reflects that. Generosity. Daniel's head spun. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again like a fish gasping for air. Mr. Hawthorne skimmed through the document, his eyebrows rising higher with every line. Finally, he set the papers down and leaned back in his chair, folding his hands over his chest. Mr. Whitmore, he said in a voice that dripped with quiet pity, according to these terms, your wife is proposing that she retains sole ownership of the house, the vacation property in Aspen, 3 of the vehicles, and 75% of your joint investment accounts. Daniel's ears roared. 75%? Are you insane? Lily shrugged, tilting her head like she couldn't understand why he was so upset. Consider it a discount for emotional damages. You're lucky I'm not asking for more. Daniel slammed his hands on the table, the noise cracking across the room. You don't have the right. Oh, but I do, Lily said smoothly. You see, Daniel, I've been documenting your little escapades for months. Text messages, hotel receipts, bank statements showing all the gifts you gave to your little pet. Mr. Hawthorne shifted uncomfortably. Lily leaned in, her voice low and sharp. And if you don't agree to these terms today, I'll be submitting everything to the court tomorrow morning, alongside a lawsuit for public defamation and emotional distress. Daniel could hardly process the words flying at him. His vision tunneled. This wasn't supposed to happen. He had pictured this divorce clean, simple, Lily quietly signing the papers and disappearing from his life like a bad dream. He was supposed to walk away free, unburdened, with Tasha on his arm. Instead, he was standing in the middle of his own personal hurricane, one Lily had orchestrated with terrifying precision. You set me up, he said numbly. I protected myself, Lily corrected. You did all the setting up, darling. I just kept the receipts. Daniel's mind scrambled for a way out. Maybe he could negotiate. Maybe he could bluff. He reached for the pen with trembling fingers and stared at the lines demanding he sign away almost everything he had built over the last decade. I'll take this to court, he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Lily gave a soft, almost sympathetic laugh. Please do. I would love to drag your name through every newspaper and courtroom in this city. Imagine what your precious business partners would think when they find out you've been funding your mistress with company money. Daniel blanched. Lily's smile widened like a predator smelling blood. Face it, Daniel. You lose either way. Sign the papers and walk away with what's left of your dignity. Or fight me and watch everything. Your business, your reputation, your future go up in smoke. The weight of it all crushed him. He slumped back into his chair, defeated, his fingers twitching helplessly over the pen. Lily sat back, utterly serene, watching him crumble with the same detached interest one might have watching a tower of cards fall. And somewhere deep inside Daniel, the last flicker of pride sparked, a pathetic, dying ember. He snatched the pen and signed the new agreement with a hand that barely obeyed his brain. When he finished, he dropped the pen like it burned him. Lily stood up gracefully, collecting the folder with a satisfied air. Pleasure doing business with you, she said crisply, before turning toward the door. Daniel opened his mouth to say something, to beg, to apologize. He wasn't even sure. But Lily didn't even glance back. She walked out into the sunlight, leaving him behind in the stale office, drowning in the wreckage of his own making. Mr. Hawthorne cleared his throat again. I'll have copies sent to both parties, he said, gathering the documents briskly. Good day, Mr. Whitmore. The door clicked shut, and Daniel was left alone with nothing but silence, and the crushing realization that this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of his punishment. Daniel sat alone in the lawyer's office for what felt like hours, though it was barely 10 minutes. His mind was a swamp of regret, rage, and disbelief. How could Lily, the quiet, loyal wife he had once so easily overlooked, turn into this? This machine of cold revenge. Outside the glass windows, the Porsche gleamed under the afternoon sun, mocking him. It wasn't just the car, it was the new life Lily had somehow built behind his back while he was busy sneaking around. A life he had no part in, a life where he was nothing more than a footnote, a warning sign. Tasha's abandonment stung just as much. One minute she was clinging to him, whispering promises of a future together, and the next, she was out the door. The second things turned messy. No loyalty, no love, just a self-serving escape the moment her prize started to tarnish. Daniel gathered his things slowly, moving like an old man. Every muscle ached, every step felt heavier than the last. When he finally made it to the parking lot, he stared blankly at his own car. A modest black BMW that suddenly looked pitiful, parked next to Lily's brand-new Porsche. He slipped into the driver's seat and gripped the wheel until his knuckles turned white. The anger built like a pressure cooker inside him, ready to blow. He needed to do something, anything. He couldn't just let Lily walk away thinking she'd won. Pulling out his phone, he scrolled through his contacts until he found Tasha's name. His thumb hovered over the call button. Part of him knew she wouldn't pick up. Part of him didn't care. He needed someone, anyone, to blame this on, to scream at, to make sense of the train wreck his life had become. He hit dial. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times, straight to voicemail. He cursed under his breath and tossed the phone into the passenger seat. A raw, ugly sound tore from his throat, part growl, part sob. He slammed his fists against the steering wheel, the horn blaring uselessly into the hot afternoon. It wasn't fair. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Daniel drove aimlessly for an hour, his mind a whirlwind of bitterness and regret. He replayed every conversation with Lily in his mind, every warning sign he had brushed aside. She had been distant for months before he met Tasha, withdrawn, cold. At the time he had thought she was just tired of him, bored. He hadn't considered that maybe she was just done pretending to be the meek, forgiving wife. Now it made perfect sense. He ended up outside a dingy bar on the edge of town, without even meaning to. The neon signs buzzed weakly in the windows, promising cheap drinks and worse decisions. For a moment he considered driving away, finding somewhere else to lick his wounds. But pride, that damned stubborn pride, pushed him inside. The bar smelled of stale beer and cigarette smoke. A few regulars sat hunched over their drinks, eyes glued to the muted football game playing on the mounted TV. The bartender, a gruff-looking man with a scruffy beard, gave Daniel a nod as he slid onto a stool. "Whiskey, double," Daniel said, without thinking. The glass hit the counter with a solid thud. Daniel tossed it back in one gulp, welcoming the burn as it scorched his throat. For a moment he felt nothing. Blessed, empty nothingness. But it didn't last. His mind dragged him back to Lily's smirk, Tasha's quick retreat, the black folder full of damning evidence. His stomach twisted. "Rough day?" the bartender asked dryly, wiping down the counter with a threadbare rag. Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "You have no idea." The bartender shrugged. "We all got stories, man. You're just another chapter." Daniel almost snapped back, but the fight left him before the words even reached his mouth. He slumped over. The counter defeated. Another drink. And another. Time blurred. Faces became smudges. Words lost their meaning. Somewhere in that drunken haze, Daniel decided he wasn't going to let this be the end. If Lily thought she could humiliate him, strip him of everything he had worked for, she had another thing coming. He would fight back. Maybe not in court. She had him cornered there. But he knew things about her too. Secrets she wouldn't want getting out. Friends who owed him favors, dirty tactics she wasn't expecting. If she wanted war, he would give her war. The thought ignited something inside him, a bitter flame. He stumbled out of the bar sometime after midnight, drunk and full of angry promises to himself. The cool night air slapped him in the face as he fumbled for his keys. Somehow he made it into the BMW and started the engine, the car roaring to life under his shaking hands. As he peeled out of the parking lot, tires screeching against the pavement, he didn't see the black sedan parked across the street. Inside the sedan, a man snapped a photo of Daniel's car speeding away, then made a quick call. "Yeah," the man said into his phone, watching the taillights disappear. "He's on the move, you were right, he's planning something." The line crackled with a cold, familiar voice. "Good, let him dig his own grave." Daniel barely remembered getting home. The night was a jagged blur of rage, whiskey, and the sick feeling of failure that clung to him like a second skin. His front yard looked overgrown and sad, the porch light flickering like even the house had given up on him. He staggered inside, slamming the door behind him so hard a picture frame fell off the wall. The glass shattered across the hardwood floor, but he didn't even flinch. His head pounded and his vision swam, but there was only one thing he could focus on now, finding a way to hurt Lily back. He stumbled into his office, the one room in the house he hadn't packed up yet. It still smelled faintly of cologne and the expensive leather furniture he'd once been proud of. Dropping into the chair behind his desk, he yanked open a drawer and pulled out an old folder, one he hadn't looked at in years. Inside were papers Lily had begged him to get rid of, old financial records, tax filings, side deals he had made during the early days of his business empire, deals that weren't exactly legal. Back then it was about survival, cutting corners, greasing the right palms, nothing he hadn't seen 100 other men do. But if those documents ever surfaced now, his whole career would go down in flames. Daniel grinned bitterly. Lily thought she was so clever, thought she had trapped him. But if he leaked these documents carefully, anonymously, and made it look like she had been involved too, she wouldn't get to keep her shiny Porsche and smug smile for long. No judge would side with her. Her precious image would shatter, and he would watch her fall. The plan felt good in his mind. Righteous, fair. She deserved it for humiliating him, for turning him into a joke. He started scanning the papers feverishly, uploading them to a burner email he had set up months ago. His fingers moved with the precision of a man who had nothing left to lose. By dawn, Daniel had crafted a careful email, addressed to a few select journalists he knew had a taste for blood. It was simple, anonymous tips, leaked documents, a suggestion that Lily Whitmore, the soon-to-be ex-wife of a successful entrepreneur, had her hands dirty too. All he had to do was press send. His thumb hovered over the mouse, trembling slightly. And that's when the knock came. Not a polite knock, a hammering, frantic pounding that made him jolt upright. Daniel's heart seized. Who the hell? He stumbled to the door and yanked it open. Standing there were 2 police officers, serious faces, hands resting casually but ominously near their belts. "Daniel Whitmore?" the taller one asked. Daniel blinked. "Yeah? We have a warrant to search your property. Step aside, sir." "Warrant? For what?" Daniel demanded, his voice cracking with disbelief. The officer didn't answer. Instead, he and his partner pushed past him into the house, already pulling out latex gloves and plastic evidence bags. Daniel staggered back, stunned. Wait a second, you can't just..." The shorter officer held up a piece of paper, the warrant, but Daniel couldn't focus enough to read it. His mind was spinning too fast. He watched in horror as they ransacked his office, his living room, even his kitchen, every drawer, every closet. "What are you looking for?" he shouted, the panic clawing up his throat. "Financial fraud, possible money laundering, embezzlement," the tall cop said casually as he thumbed through Daniel's personal files. "Anonymous tip, documents provided." Daniel's world tilted violently. Anonymous tip, documents. No, it couldn't be. It was supposed to be his move. His secret play against Lily. How could she... And then it hit him. She knew. She had always known. Maybe she even planted some of the evidence herself. Maybe the whole confrontation at the lawyer's office had been a setup from the beginning, to provoke him into making a stupid, desperate move she could exploit. She hadn't just beat him. She had led him straight into a trap like a lamb, to the slaughter. Daniel felt his knees buckle, the edges of his vision going dark. The officers moved quickly now, bagging his laptop, his phone, his backup drives. everything. The taller cop turned to him, reading him his rights with a bored expression, as if Daniel were just another loser who thought he was smarter than the system. "You have the right to remain silent." Daniel heard the words, but they sounded far away like echoes underwater. His hands were wrenched behind his back, cold metal snapping around his wrists. He was marched out of his own house, head ducked against the flash of neighbors' lights. People peeking out of windows, whispering behind their hands. The ultimate walk of shame. And somewhere out there Daniel knew Lily was watching and smiling. The holding cell smelled like piss and hopelessness. Daniel sat slumped on the narrow bench, his hands dangling uselessly between his knees, the cuffs biting into his wrists. He stared at the floor, not even seeing it, his mind looping the same brutal thoughts over and over. This wasn't real, it couldn't be. Men like him didn't end up here, humiliated, trapped, discarded like trash. Men like him won. They cheated. They lied. They walked away richer for it. That's how the world worked. Until today. He didn't know how much time had passed when a heavy-set guard clanged the cell door open and barked his name. "Lawyer's here for you." Daniel staggered to his feet, barely keeping his balance as he was hauled out and led down a series of bleak grey hallways. At the end of one, in a glass-walled meeting room, sat a man in a dark suit, sleek, smug, expensive. Daniel recognized him instantly. His name was Mason Ward, one of the most notorious defense attorneys in the city. But Daniel hadn't called him. Lily had. The guard shoved him into the chair and slammed the door behind him. Mason steepled his fingers and regarded Daniel like he was a puzzle he had already solved. "Mr. Whitmore," Mason said smoothly, "your wife, pardon, soon-to-be ex-wife, retained me on your behalf. Out of generosity." Daniel's stomach twisted. "Why would she?" Mason smiled thinly. "Because, Mr. Whitmore, she doesn't want you to rot in jail. She just wants you broken." The words hit Daniel harder than any punch. Broken. Not jailed, not ruined publicly, not dead, broken. Mason slid a crisp folder across the table. Daniel stared at it like it might bite him. "Inside are two options," Mason said calmly. "One, you fight the charges, go to court, face years of trials, public humiliation, financial ruin. You'll lose everything. Your business, your home. Any friend still foolish enough to stand by you?" Daniel swallowed hard, his mouth dry as sandpaper. "Two," Mason continued, tapping the folder lightly. "You sign a plea deal. Minimal prison time. No press circus. Quiet settlement. Lily gets what she wants, and you get a chance to rebuild your miserable life someday." Daniel's hands shook as he reached for the folder. Inside, as promised, were two paths, both bleak, both devastating. He wasn't choosing victory anymore. He was choosing the way he wanted to lose. Mason leaned back, watching him without sympathy. "I'd suggest you take the deal. You're not built for prison." Daniel's mind flashed images he didn't want. Concrete cells, iron bars, violence lurking in every shadow. No, he couldn't survive that. But signing the deal meant accepting total defeat. It meant letting Lily have everything. The house, the cars, the investments. His reputation would still be a smoldering ruin. His name would be a punchline in every boardroom he once walked into with pride. He hesitated. Mason smiled slightly, sensing the struggle. "You thought you could play the game, Daniel. But you forgot. The real power players don't scream and stomp when they lose. They let you hang yourself and smile while you do it." Daniel clenched his jaw so hard it hurt. He signed. The pen felt heavier than any weapon. When he was done, Mason collected the papers, stood up and smoothed his suit jacket. "You'll be processed out by morning," he said briskly. "Lily's covering your bail as a gesture of goodwill. Try not to thank her too hard." Daniel didn't respond. Couldn't. After Mason left, Daniel sat there staring at the table, empty inside. He thought he had been angry before, thought he had hit rock bottom, but this was different. This was hollow, like someone had carved him out with a blunt knife and left nothing but scraps behind. When he was finally led back to the holding area, he didn't even notice the guards' sneers, didn't hear the muttered jokes from the other prisoners. His mind was somewhere else entirely, replaying every mistake, every smug smile, every time he thought he had been clever enough to get away with it all. Lily had outplayed him, not by being louder, not by being crueler, but by being smarter, and he had walked straight into her trap with both eyes open. By the time dawn bled across the sky, Daniel knew something he hadn't been willing to accept before. He hadn't just lost everything. He had been designed to lose. Morning crept into the city slow and grey, like a curtain being dragged across a filthy window. Daniel sat in the back of a cab, staring out at the world with dead eyes. His wrists still bore faint red marks from the cuffs, his clothes reeked of stale sweat and defeat, and his mouth tasted like ashes. The cabbie didn't speak. He took one look at Daniel when he climbed in and knew better. Daniel clutched a crumpled sheet of paper in his lap. His bail receipt, signed not by him but by Lily. Even now she controlled every move he made. He asked the driver to take him home before realizing midway there that he didn't even have a home anymore. Technically, the house was still in both their names, for now. But after the plea deal, Lily would claim it officially. And after last night's police invasion, the place wasn't a home anymore. It was a crime scene. Still, when the cab pulled up to the driveway, Daniel's gut twisted painfully. The front door stood ajar, yellow police tape fluttering limply in the weak morning breeze. His neighbors' cars lined the street like vultures, curtains twitching as curious eyes drank in the spectacle of the once proud Whitmores being dragged into the dirt. Daniel got out slowly, ignoring the stairs, his legs aching with exhaustion. He stepped over the tape, pushed open the door, and was immediately met with the stench of disruption. Overturned furniture, open drawers, papers scattered like autumn leaves. His once immaculate house now looked like it had been ransacked by animals. He picked his way through the mess until he reached the living room. Sitting there, calm as a queen surveying her conquered kingdom, was Lily. She sipped coffee from one of the mugs Daniel had bought on their honeymoon in Santorini. The word love faded but still readable along the rim. She was dressed casually, jeans, white blouse, but everything about her radiated control, from the way she crossed her legs to the faint, almost bored smile playing on her lips. Daniel froze. "What the hell are you doing here?" he croaked. Lily looked up, blinking as if she hadn't even noticed him standing there. "Just making sure everything's moving along," she said lightly, her voice so casual it made him want to scream. "I figured you'd end up here eventually. Old habits die hard after all." Daniel stumbled forward, fists clenching at his sides. "You destroyed me." Lily set her mug down gently on the coffee table, the same table Daniel had once bragged. "Cost more than most people's cars." "I didn't destroy you," she said. "You destroyed yourself. I just turned on the lights." Daniel's mouth twisted into a bitter sneer. "You think this makes you better than me?" "No," Lily said, rising from the couch. She walked toward him, heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. "I think this makes me smarter than you." The words hit harder than any punch. Lily stood in front of him now, so close he could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. Once upon a time he had loved those eyes. Now all he saw was cold, razor-sharp intelligence. "You had everything, Daniel," she said softly. "A good life, a wife who would have stood by you through anything, and you threw it away for a girl who ran the second things got hard." Daniel flinched, but she didn't stop. "You weren't just stupid," Lily said, voice tightening. "You were arrogant. You thought you could cheat, lie, betray Bruce, and there'd be no consequences, because men like you always think the rules don't apply to you." Daniel opened his mouth to defend himself, but the words stuck, because deep down he knew she was right. "You're not special," Lily whispered, stepping even closer, her breath ghosting against his cheek. "You're just another sad man who thought he was untouchable." Daniel felt something inside him shatter, something that hadn't broken even when he was in that cell. Lily stepped back, smoothing a hand over her hair. "I'll be moving my things out later today," she said briskly. "The Porsche's already been transferred to my name. The house will follow. You'll receive official notice next week." She turned to leave, but paused at the doorway, glancing over her shoulder. "Oh, and Daniel?" she added, her voice light and mocking now. "Next time you cheat, try picking someone smarter than a gold-digging bartender. It's less embarrassing that way." And then she was gone. Daniel stood there, alone in the ruins of his life, staring at the empty doorway where the woman he once loved had walked out without looking back. He had thought he could play the game, but Lily had been playing chess while he was busy flipping over checkers pieces. And now there was nothing left for him to lose. The days blurred together after that. Daniel moved into a rundown motel on the edge of town, the kind of place where the carpets were permanently damp, and the walls were so thin you could hear every drunken argument and miserable sob from the next room. He lived out of a single suitcase, his once expensive suits hanging like sad, deflated skins in the tiny, cracked closet. His phone buzzed constantly at first, calls from business partners, friends, even distant family. Some wanted to distance themselves, some just wanted gossip. A few pretended to care. Daniel ignored them all. What was the point? He wasn't Daniel Whitmore anymore, the sharp-tongued deal-maker, the name that opened doors. He was a joke now, a whispered cautionary tale. On the third day, he ventured out, pulling the hood of his sweatshirt low over his face. He needed to see how bad the damage really was. It was worse than he imagined. Every newsstand, every blog, every screen seemed to be screaming his downfall. Local tycoon caught in financial scandal. From penthouse to prison, the fall of Daniel Whitmore. His photo was everywhere. His mugshot, bloated and wild-eyed, frozen forever online. Even worse were the editorials, the endless opinion pieces. They painted him as greedy, arrogant, abusive. Some details true, some twisted beyond recognition. But it didn't matter. Perception was reality now. No one would do business with him again. No one would hire him. Hell, no one would even talk to him. Daniel wandered the streets like a ghost, unshaven, unshowered, shivering inside his oversized hoodie. The city that had once bent over backward to please him now turned its back. Bartenders refused to serve him. Former acquaintances crossed the street to avoid him. One man, a rival from years ago, even spat at his feet. By the end of the week, Daniel stopped leaving the motel altogether. He drank instead, cheap, burning liquor from the gas station down the road. He stopped answering the few texts that still came in. Even Tasha, the mistress he had ruined everything for, sent a half-hearted apology once, a pathetic "hope you're okay" message with a sad face emoji. He deleted it without replying. There was no one left to blame anymore. No one but himself. One night, Daniel sat on the edge of the lumpy motel bed, staring at a cheap plastic clock ticking away the seconds of his meaningless life. A bottle of whiskey dangled from one hand. In the other, he clutched his phone, scrolling mindlessly through Lily's social media. She was thriving. New pictures flooded her page daily, smiling with new friends, attending charity galas, even posing next to her gleaming Porsche in designer sunglasses. If the scandal had touched her at all, she didn't show it. She looked radiant, free, untouchable. It should have made him furious. It should have stoked the last embers of rage inside him. Instead, it hollowed him out even more. She had been smarter. She had seen through him, and she had won. Daniel threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall with a sickening crack and fell to the floor, shattered. He buried his face in his hands, the first sob breaking out of him like a punch to the gut. He cried, ugly, shaking, gasping tears, the kind he hadn't allowed himself since he was a child. Cried for the man he used to be, cried for the man he had become. At some point the whiskey bottle slipped from his hand, spilling into the thin carpet like blood. And Daniel finally understood something he had fought against from the moment. Lily walked into that lawyer's office. This wasn't just a bad patch, this was it. This was who he was now, a hollow, ruined man. And no one, not Lily, not Tasha, not even himself, was coming to save him. Daniel woke the next morning to a splitting headache and a motel room that smelled like regret. The whiskey bottle was empty, the carpet stained. His mouth tasted like metal. For a long time, he just lay there, staring at the cracked ceiling, feeling the crushing weight of his own existence pressing down harder than ever. He was officially bankrupt now. He had gotten the email late last night. Not that he needed it. The business had collapsed within days of the scandal breaking. Investors pulled out, clients fled, and the banks came clawing at what little scraps remained. He didn't even fight it. What was there left to save? He climbed out of bed stiffly, every muscle in his body aching. His suit, the last nice one he owned, was crumpled over a chair like a dead thing. He tugged it on anyway because he needed to face the last humiliation on his own 2 feet. Today was the final meeting. Today was the day Lily would officially claim everything: the house, the cars, the money, the reputation. And Daniel Whitmore, once the king of this city, would walk away with nothing but a cheap motel key and a name no one dared say out loud anymore. He took a bus downtown, too broke now even for a cab, ignoring the curious glances, the whispers. It didn't matter anymore. Let them look. Let them talk. They weren't wrong. When he arrived at the law offices, Lily was already there. Of course she was. She looked perfect, as always. Tailored suit, flawless hair, the faintest hint of a smile on her lips. Not gloating, not mocking, just victorious. Daniel lowered his head as he entered the conference room, unable to meet her eyes. The lawyers made their speeches. Papers were passed back and forth. Daniel signed wherever they told him, his hand barely functioning. He barely heard the words. Words like complete transfer of assets, final settlement, irrevocable, agreement. With every signature, another piece of his old life crumbled away. When it was over, the lead lawyer slid the final document across the table. "Congratulations, Ms. Whitmore," he said smoothly. "Everything is now officially in your name." Daniel flinched at the word. Ms. Whitmore, not Mrs., not his anything, just her. Lily stood, gathering her things without a word. Daniel couldn't help himself. He looked up, searching her face for any flicker of pity, any sign that somewhere deep down she still remembered the man he used to be. But there was nothing. Just calm, just finality. She turned to leave, her heels clicking against the marble floor, and that was when Daniel, broken and hollow, did something he never thought he would. He stood up too. "Lily," he said, his voice cracking like an old record. She paused, glancing back at him with cool detachment. He swallowed hard, shame burning his throat. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for everything." For a moment, he thought she might say something. Forgive him, spit on him, anything. But Lily just gave him a small, almost sad smile. "I know you are," she said softly. "But sorry doesn't fix broken things, Daniel. It never did." And then she was gone. Really gone this time. Daniel sat back down heavily, staring at the empty chair she had left behind. The room around him was quiet now, painfully quiet. The lawyers packed up their papers. The receptionist made polite noises in the background. The world moved on, without him. He walked out into the city streets alone. No car, no house, no business, no friends. The sunlight was too bright, too cruel. Every sound, the honking horns, the chatter of strangers, the ringing of phones, felt like it belonged to another world, a world Daniel wasn't a part of anymore. He wandered without direction for hours, past the places he used to own, past the restaurants that once begged for his business, past the skyscrapers that used to light up when he arrived. Now, nobody looked twice at him. By evening, Daniel found himself on a small dirty bridge overlooking the river. The water below was dark and endless. He leaned on the rail, staring down. For the first time in days, his mind was quiet. No anger, no plans, no revenge. Just the cold, clear understanding that he had built his empire out of lies and arrogance, and Lily had simply been the one smart enough, brave enough, to tear it down before it destroyed her too. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the city lights flickered on. Daniel straightened up slowly, shivering in the cool breeze. He wasn't going to jump. Not tonight. He wasn't brave enough for that. Instead, he turned and walked back toward the crumbling motel that had become his world, one slow, dragging step at a time. There was no comeback waiting for him. No miracle. Redemption. Some men fall from grace, some men are pushed. But Daniel Whitmore, he had jumped thinking he could fly, and he had no one to blame but himself.